Well, it's an Irish story, and it's something we're all so aware of growing up. But also, it's interesting when you get a bit older to see kind of go, what actually happened? What actually happened? And it's, you know, it's such a complicated time in the sense of, in the Irish sense, but also in the global sense. So it was fascinating to read, and it was a real page turner, and the characters are so well drawn, and they're fictional characters, most of them. So you get artistic license to mind the characters a bit more. So yeah, there was a whole heap of stuff that I was attracted to anyway.
Yeah, me too. I thought that it was from women's perspectives as well was a big thing for me, because they've kind of pretty much been written out of history in the Rising. So it was interesting to see what they would have been doing, and nobody actually knows how many women were involved, because a lot of women went back to their lives and back into their society. So it was interesting to see what these people did and how they ended up, and also, yeah, like you're saying, not knowing exactly what did happen. You know, and there were certain bits, I remember filming a scene where we're all singing God Save the King, and you kind of go, of course, that's what was happening. Do you know what I mean? You kind of go, you don't think about that stuff. So just those things, to go back and be in it. And
yeah, and whatever, you know, there was a 7-year period after the Rising where there was a war and a civil war and a treaty. It was such a time of social upheaval that wasn't really realised. But yeah, there was feminists, there was socialists. You know, this was a time of real change. Whether or not we achieved that or not, I'm not sure. But yeah, it was fascinating to delve into that, you know. I play a character called Jimmy Matten, who's from the Tenements. And he is involved with the Irish Citizen Army, which was set up by one of the signatures of the proclamation, which is James Connolly. So he is out to fight and to win, but he's also involved in a kind of love triangle with Charlie Murphy's character and Paul Reed's character. Also he's there. Also his brothers fighting in the British Army. So yeah, that's kind of my...
Yeah, and there was a story of similar brothers as well who were fighting on opposite sides, and you know, so it's like taken from little pieces. That character, your character.
Yeah, it's kind of a composite of different people. But even on the Irish side, there were people who wanted conservative Catholic Ireland, people who wanted a very progressive society. So it was, yeah. Anyway.
And my character is Frances O'Flaherty, and she is a teacher working, and she's a Cumann na Mban member, and really working with Pádraig Pearse in Scoilena. So you know, trying to bring back Celtic Ireland, speaking the language, speaking Irish, teaching everything through Irish, which was revolutionary at the time. Nobody was really doing it. So that's her goal, that's her struggle and fight to bring back, I suppose, yeah, the language and a republic. So she's kind of very determined, and I suppose got a really linear perspective, and that's what she wants, and that's what she's fighting for, and doesn't really see anybody else's perspective.
I read a lot just because I obviously didn't listen during history class as much as I should have. So yeah, a lot of reading, and there's a huge amount of material on it. And I mean, I think only in the last 10 years there's been a lot of witness statements that were released, that were recorded in like the 40s of people who had fought, and they're only released about 10 years ago. So it's not set in stone. There's still all this new stuff coming out, you know. So yeah.
And I suppose for me the same. There was just so much stuff that I didn't know, and I just knew what I'd learned at school. And you kind of think, you know, when you learn something at school, you go, that's what happened, I know about it. But once you kind of open, it's like a can of worms. There were so many different people, so much stuff going on. There was a great book that I kind of referred to doing my bit for Ireland, which was an autobiography by a woman called Margaret Skinner, who was a sniper. So you kind of go, oh, nobody knows about her. There's been nothing really written about her. There's a great BBC documentary from the 70s, which are like actual people who fought in the Rising speaking, and you kind of go, all of that stuff was put aside because you just learn it in school, and then once you scratch the surface, there's so much more to learn.
It's a violent uprising. That changes things totally, and it makes you think of your own self about how, you know what I mean, like it's happening nowadays in different parts of the world. So it's, you know, you just, what are the consequences of that? The cost of that, are you letting the genie out of the bottle? And you know, if you bring the gun into it, you can't take the gun away. So there's lots of really interesting stuff there about the costs and implications of violence, and it doesn't shy away from that. So that's a universal kind of.
Yeah, and the whole anti-austerity thing as well, which is really relevant nowadays, and what's going on in Europe, and the fact that, I mean, the tenements were the biggest slums in Europe at the time, so you had a huge mass poverty as well, and then people doing very well and trying to balance that out, and obviously they wanted more, and everybody's different perspectives, which I think we can all relate to nowadays. So that's very relevant all over the world.